Welcome everyone. It's really my pleasure to start this meeting and the inaugural lecture in this series, AZADI Ka AMRIT MAHOTSAVA. As all of you know, that next year, 15th of August, we will celebrate, our nation will celebrate the 75th anniversary of our independence. And as a run-up to that, for 75 weeks, we are celebrating in various ways. One of the ways that we are celebrating is to have a series of distinguished lectures. We have already placed a large number of not a large number, but some articles on our articles repository as again part of this run-up to the 75th anniversary of our independence. Today we are inaugurating in the lecture series, and this is being inaugurated by the Secretary to the Department of Biotechnology, Dr. Renu Swarup. It's really my pleasure to introduce Dr. Swarup. Dr. Swarup has a PhD, did her PhD in genetics and plant engineering, and then did a postdoc at John Innes Center in the UK. She returned to India and joined Department of Biotechnology in 1989 and has been working in the department ever since. During her long tenure in DBT, she has taken many major responsibilities and has been lauded for executing them very well. She has overseen the National Biopharma Mission. She was instrumental in the formation of the Biotechnology Vision and the National Biotechnology Development Strategy. She has headed the National Bioresource Development Board and the Biotechnology Industry Research Assistance Council. BIDAC actually moved up from a fledgling organization to a very vibrant organization under Dr. Swarup's leadership. Dr. Swarup is a champion of women in science. She initiated again a scheme that's become very vibrant, a vibrant scheme in DBT known as BioCare, Biotechnology Career Advancement for Women Scientists. Dr. Swarup, for her various kinds of contributions, has been decorated with a large number of awards and medals. I will mention just three of them. She, in the year 2012, she got the Person of the Year Award from Biospectrum. In 2017, she got the National Entrepreneurship Award. In 2018, she got the Regional Prize in Science Diplomacy from the World Academy of Sciences. For her initiative in supporting microbial diversity studies in the country, which she did for a long period of time, she was instrumental in the in moving up the National Center for Microbial Resource, which is a part of the National Center for Cell Science. The initiative that she took in supporting the microbial diversity studies in the country, the National Center for Microbial Resource had discovered recently an extremophile and a microbial species called Natrialba, which they have named in her honor. It's now called, or this particular species is now called Natrialba sorupia. So it is really a very, very great honor for Dr. Swarup, and it is more importantly, it's a very great honor for us that she's able to come and inaugurate this lecture series. And the title of our lecture today is called Changing Science and Technology Landscape in India, Propelling into the Future. We look forward to your talk, Dr. Swarup, and I'm pretty sure that you will take some questions at the end, and we look forward to a good discussion at the end as well. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation, and we look forward to your talk.
Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to deliver the first in the series of the India 75 Bharat Ka Amrit Mahotsav lecture that is there. It's always a pleasure to be at any of the Academy initiatives. More than anything else, I think what the academies bring to us today is the high level of intellect, and also, more importantly, the directions that they put before us in terms of the policies, in terms of what our vision has to be for the country, and working with all of us in the scientific ministries to then develop a very clear action plan as to how we move ahead. In these 75 years, which we are now approaching very soon, The academies have played a very important role in working with the science agencies, working with the government, and I thought it would be most appropriate if I share some of my thoughts with you as to where are we positioned today after these 75 years post-independence, but more importantly, are we really now looking at those steps which will help us to move into the future? This is really, I thought, some key areas where India has been able to get its strength. We've got early science and technology strengths from pre-independence. It was a lot of it happened at that point of time to where we stand today, be it in the area of nuclear sciences, space sciences, medicine, climate change, food, agriculture, biological sciences, ability, digital empowerment. These are the key strengths and the key pillars on which today we are focusing our science and technology in terms of its delivery and application for society, in terms of also the discovery science, in terms of our new knowledge that we are generating. And this is really the strength that we have, which we are seeing taking forward. What is it that we need to do? If you look at these very sectors, you will see that there have been key missions which India has led, which India has handled, which have given us very clear results. Whether it was the Green Revolution, which emerged because of the Bengal famine that we had, and we all know that with Dr. Swaminathan, Dr. Norman Borlaug, the key actions which were taken for the Green Revolution have today brought us to a level where we are even today not only self-sufficient, but we have acquired global leadership in the areas of our food security, crop production improvement. Similarly, the White Revolution, we have Dr. Kurian, who's contributed so greatly, and you see where India is positioned today in terms of our global, for the White Revolution, our global production figures. Similarly, if you look at our space and our nuclear sciences, and I particularly put in the faces of the individuals who've been champions to lead these initiatives and these activities, whether it's Dr. Homi Bhabha, or it's Dr. Vikram Sarabhai, or it's Satish Dhawan, or Dr. Abdul Kalam, and you see the success that we've had, whether it's the Pokhran, or whether it's the first Aryabhatta, or the Mangalyaan. That's how we've moved. And how did it begin? It began because of the strengths that we acquired in terms of our science technology. And moving on, now we are looking at adding on many other components of our innovation, of our entrepreneurship, which I will take you through my slides into. I think this was one of our biggest success stories, the vaccination program for polio eradication. In 2014, when India was declared polio-free, along with other Southeast Asian countries, that was a huge, huge effort that had gone into it. And this brought to us two things. One is the strength that we had in our vaccination program, but also the strength that we brought in, not only in the immunization program, but in the development of vaccines and creating a very massive healthcare system at the ground level. So our secondary, primary healthcare centers, secondary healthcare centers, and the tertiary healthcare centers. So that was also signifying the strength that the medical technologies, but also the infrastructure that brought into it. Now, if you look at our science policies in all these years, starting from the Scientific Policy Resolution in 1958, what does it tell us about our growth trajectory? If you look at it, India has always placed a major emphasis on strategic growth, development, new applications, collaborations, investments, technology, developments, and also trying to see how the science that we do moves towards societal impact. In fact, now we have been, over these last few years, very clearly bringing out the concept of Vigyan se Vikas. What is the development that we do with science? And in fact, at this point of time, it would be appropriate for me to let you know that for the Bharat Ka Amrit Mahotsav, the Science and Technology group, that's the group of secretaries, we have about 9 different ministries and departments. We have collectively agreed to put a tagline, and that is Vigyan se Vikas, Pradyogiki se Pragati. because it's not only science, it's technology, which also gives you the pragati with it. And I think that is really what the basis and the foundation of it has been through our various policies, the scientific policy resolution, the technology policy statement, the science technology policy, the science technology policy 2013, and now we are at the cusp of just launching our science technology innovation policy for 2021. These slides only highlight what the key emphasis of these were. And if you see, that's really how our growth progressed. We started by looking at what is the strength that we bring in of bridging that gap between advanced and backward nations. And that's at the time when we just our independence. When we were only trying, what were those vigorous measures that we need to take? As we moved into the technology policy statement, the emphasis came more and more on becoming self-reliant, looking at trying to see how we can develop our own technologies. How do we bring in that to see how we take it ahead? And then, of course, the Science Technology Policy 2013. This gave us very clearly a concept and it brought out the strengths of the strategic partnership, bilateral partnership, multilateral partnership. And I think at this point in time, it became very clear to us that we are no longer now just technology receivers. We became co-developers of technology. Our collaborations, we became partners in many large mega missions, global leadership that we started offering in terms of the science and technology strengths that we had. And in the science technology innovation policy, which I'm sure many of you have been part of these stakeholder discussions and consultations, the innovation becomes a very key aspect. And this policy is now focusing on trying to take science to society, trying to take science for unmet needs. And the recent COVID times has given us real life examples of how that could be done. How do we actually judicially deploy these in terms of different activities? These are the strengths that we had. And again, this maybe some figures would probably be a little outdated because these would be 2017 and 18 data. I really have not been able to put in some of the recent data which came out in the recent report which DST brought out. But the fact is that these are all on the rise. We're all trying to get better and better as we move on. The purpose of this slide is to let you know that we've been able to identify those critical aspects where we need to build our strength for the research, innovation, and startup ecosystem. Whether it's supporting a number of graduate and postgraduate, postdoctoral students, because that's our human capital, that's where our investment is required, or it is looking at what our science and engineering publication figures are, what our IP status is, where are we positioned in the global innovation rankings, how are we promoting startups? What are those special mechanisms and governance structures that we've created? Are they technology parks? Bring together the academia and the industry, along with the university ecosystem, IITs, etc. All these large number of incubators, which allow us to give that mentorship to the startups as we move forward. Been key and critical challenges that we've had in this sector. If you look at what really our R&D investments have been, those have been definitely many a times, but you also can see how are they related to our full-time researchers. So if you look at Israel, which has the highest R&D investment in terms of the GDP percentage, it also has the highest number of full-time researchers. And so they're all proportionate as we move on. So what does it tell us? It tells us this very clearly, that if we have to move forward, if we need to look at what our global positioning has to get better, whether it's in terms of enhancing our investments into R&D, we also need to build capacities at human resource, full-time researchers, because you need to have those capacities to be able to absorb that higher level of investment as it moves forward. The other challenge that we have is we keep talking about an all-inclusive participation for taking our programs forward. how is this going to happen? Very recently, we've been so pleased the sector opened it up to the industry to come forward. The defense has brought in the industry. Biotechnology has been doing it for some time now. So you have strategic sectors also coming in. What is the purpose of all this? Because we do realize that when you're looking at discovery science and you're taking it towards application science, if you actually have to move through the translational phase, the endpoint is only reached when you bring in all stakeholders. And industry and startups are a very, very important critical component of this whole stakeholder group that we form. But for that, do we actually have a good public-private partnership, sharing of investments? So you see, if you just relate to the previous slide that I mentioned to you, where we said that the investment in terms of GDP, India was figuring towards the end of that diagram that I showed. Here, if you see, India again, if you look at the government funding is 66 vis-a-vis 33 from the private sector. And if you look at Israel, which was the highest in terms of percentage of the investment in GDP, is totally reverse. It's 31% from the public and 69% from the private sector. I think this is a point when we're talking about the changing landscape, what needs to change. I think this needs to change. How are we going to do this is important. And those are some of the key discussions we need to have. That how would we change all this? We have a wonderful wish list. We've got strengths that we've been able to acquire. What are those changes that we need to bring into the system as we move ahead? Now, if you look at really how we have brought in our entire national program that we've talked about, the strengths that I spoke to you in the first slide about, I think the emphasis has been in aligning our national missions with the SDGs, because today we are not looking only at national missions for technology development, for fulfilling just the national needs, but it's also the global challenges that we need to address. And India has played a very important role in that. And I think that's really where we are now talking about our global leadership. There are a large number of challenges that we have. Whether it's increasing our world food supply, these are global challenges where we as a country are contributing to, or it's really the increase that we have in terms of our global emissions, or how do we decrease the oil and liquid gas production. But then there are a lot of solutions that we have. And these solutions that we have, there are long-term sustainable development solutions. We have a lot of potential in many of the sectors, whether it's healthcare, whether it's food security, whether it's looking at our oceans, whether it's looking at water, climate change, looking at all aspects. I think we need to now carefully assess those trends and see moving forward, are we actually using well what is available with us? So what the strength is, what we are not using is yet, how can we use that better? It's also important for us then to focus on saying, if we're going to put all this together, we need to create a very robust innovation ecosystem, a robust R&D system, a robust system where what are those key pillars? If we take all the solutions that we are looking at in terms of, as I said, delivery, nurturing human capital, surely that's one of our key areas that we need to focus on. Investing in physical and technological infrastructure for R&D. So it's the entire capacity building that we are talking about. IP, I think we need to do much better than what we are doing right now. Why is India not there in terms of its IPR? If you look at the rankings, many a times we do talk about the complexities of our regulatory ecosystem. Global harmonization is what is required for any of the areas, and especially biotechnology, the area that I come from. We need to see how we can sort of put in our efforts to make this harmonized with global ecosystems. Today in COVID times, we've realized the need of it. If today we've been able to allow emergency use authorization for those vaccines which have got global clearances from the regulators, we would want the same to be reciprocal for our regulators' clearances to be accepted. So that requires global harmonization. Public-private partnership, if you're going to put that together, we do need to have a very, very strong framework for enhancing this public-private partnership through a technology transfer, providing for incentives, looking at the legal framework. That's really what's important. Now, coming specifically to an example of what has changed over all these years, how have we moved? I, as would have been expected, have picked up biotechnology as the example because that's my department, that's the area which I have been within all these years. So what have we done from 86 to 2020? That was just till the year that we've just gone by with the pandemic. The Department of Biotechnology has focused a lot on taking discovery, bringing in the innovation, but more importantly, creating a very, very strong enterprise. Because then it's not left just as an academic exercise, it becomes an application of the new technologies which we need. So as I said, and if you refer back to the last slide that I showed, in which I said capacity building was very important, I think that's what we focused on. And today, with great pride, we can say that any laboratory, any institute in the country which is doing work in biotechnology has the support from the Department of Biotechnology, whether it's in terms of the undergraduate star colleges or the postgraduate program or the doctoral research that we do or the research associate or some of our young researcher fellowships, our Bright Awards that we put in, the SEHET scheme that we put in for access to shared infrastructure, and building the whole ecosystem through our 16 institutes of DBT, the large number of institutes and universities across the country where we have the large number of research programs that we support. It's a matter of pride for us that we have been able to support such a large number of scientists. More than 2,000 projects get supported each year just through our competitive grant system. Leave aside all the others that we put in through the other system. And we range from basic knowledge generation research to applied research to translational research. We have consciously made an effort to make sure that the balance that we have between the funding that goes for basic research and translational research, it's maintained because we know it's important to do that. But then taking this forward, there's been a major emphasis in all these 35 years of the department to build a very strong ecosystem for innovation and entrepreneurship. Facilitate the industry interface, support startups, and of course, our policies, the regulation, all that as we move on. If you see, as I said, India has played a very important role in terms of global leadership. And we have, for many areas, been able to do that. The whole engagement that we've had for the science and technology sector as a whole covers more than 80 countries. And this, of course, is the Ministry of Science and Technology, which covers DBT, DST, CSIR, all of them. Most of them active, some of them may be partnerships which are not so very active, but I think the strength is that's really where India is now looked at as a preferred partner. And we have different instruments through which we do these global partnerships. Whether these are, as I said, research partnerships for global and national challenges, researcher mobilities, training capacity building. And then we've got different models in which we do this, country specific, bilateral, multilateral, area specific. You could go to different areas of healthcare, agriculture, clean energy, environment, industrial growth, all of them together. And then we have institutional partnerships that we do with UNIDO, with UNESCO and TWAS. And then, of course, we do have many, as I've said, in the area specific organizational partnerships that we do. We've had partnerships that we have done with the Gates Foundation, with the Wellcome Trust, many such partnerships that we've been able to take on with NIH under our Indo-US Vaccine Action Program, a large number of them. We've also played a very important role with many other countries to build these bioeconomy policies. And if you see our latest strategy that we brought out, it's all about the bioeconomy growth, because India has positioned itself for the bioeconomy growth, saying that in the next 5 years, we will be able to reach 150 billion. And India has played a very important role in this. Some of the mega science missions that we have launched, and again addressing global challenges. This has given us not only an opportunity to be global leaders, but it has also given us an opportunity to build capacities within our own country. And we started with, of course, the Rice Genome Sequencing Initiative, which we started way back, and India was one of the first countries to take this on. And in 1998, we partnered with this. So that was really how we began our global partnerships. And this gave us not just what we are looking at today, our major rice improvement initiatives in terms of molecular breeding and functional genomics, but it also built capacities for genomics that we have been able to take forward. And today we have one of the largest genotyping program for the at the NIPGR. This also gave us the opportunity then to become partners in the tomato genome sequencing program. And you all know this wonderful story of the wheat genome sequencing, which we have been able to not only be a partner to, but played a very important role. And each of these, as I've said, were not left as just initial sequencing programs which we became partners to, but they've translated into crop improvement programs where we have improved products that we look at. This is a slide which I borrowed from Partha because this is the International Cancer Genome Consortium, which again, when we became partners to, India plays a very, very important role in the project on oral cancer. Again, I think the strength that we brought to it is, of course, India's contribution to it. The NIBMG working with the Mumbai Data Memorial. But I think the strength is not just in the number of those 350 or 500 samples that we're looking at. It's the capacity that we've built in the country, the recognition that the country has got for being a leader in being able to take on the genome sequencing work, and it has not stopped at genome sequencing. This is now moving forward in terms of combining it with the data science tools, in terms of looking at bringing in artificial intelligence, seeing how we could look at this genomics data to be able to give us predictive diagnosis. So there's a whole lot of activities that we take along with this, but this was clearly the beginning of our contributions to the area of genomics for healthcare. And that helped us to now come up with what we have, the Affordable Healthcare Program, but more importantly, the precision healthcare mission that we are all talking about, which we should be launching very soon. We've also become partners to the International Common Disease Alliance, and here again, Partha has played a very important role, but I see this as a very important opportunity. Because it's not just looking at how we are bringing in the genomics, but as I said, connecting all aspects of it. So maps, really the maps to the mechanisms to the medicine, which is what this is going to do. And here again, now we are looking at many groups across the country coming forward, becoming part of this group that we have been able to set up in the country, and not only contribute, but also benefit from this alliance that's going to be set up. We are deeply engaged in this Human Cell Atlas discussion, and we are hoping that very soon we should be able to sign in our contribution to this, which again allows us now going a step forward to create a comprehensive reference map for all human cells. So you see, it's looking at the discovery science right up to the application science, and then seeing how each of our research groups within the country can benefit from this. And that is the whole purpose of how we move ahead. Coming to the whole area of interdisciplinary sciences, transdisciplinary sciences, I think that moving forward is where we need to focus on now. That is where our strength has to move to. Biological sciences is really expanding, and it's at a space that we need to keep pace with, and I think somewhere we need to bring these teams who can take this forward. If you look at this box that I've put before you, except for a couple of them, we haven't really been able to build deep critical strength in some of these important areas. We've done it for genome, but genome editing, we still need to get our policies in place to take it forward. AI and big data, we've got a lot of data that's been brought out, but have we been able to connect it with the analysis of the data? So data generation is one thing. Are we really doing that? So each of these boxes, I think we need to really put in a lot of effort to see how we can take it forward. The omics revolution, to a great extent, I think we've been able to build strengths in this. Whether it's the precision medicine, as I spoke about, the crop plants or the livestock or industrial platforms, across all of them. And this, again, as I said, there's a lot of credit which goes to the early, our early contributions to it, building capacities, whether it was at NIBMG, Kalyani cluster, or it was at NIPGR in New Delhi, or it is with our institute, CDFT. So it's the institutes, and then of course many other institutes of CSIR, of DST and others, which have all, and institutes like Indian Institute of Science and others who played a very important role. ICR, agricultural institutes who've contributed to the agriculture sector. But it's all about building strengths, which we have been able to do. Some of these areas still need more effort, where we need these are, of course, I'll skip through these slides because these are only examples of what we have been able to achieve in terms of some of these major programs. Because we were able to build strengths in molecular characterization of crop plants, today we've been able to take on this massive exercise of being able to characterize 65,000 accessions of our own indigenous crop genetic resources so that we could develop pre-breeding material, which can then be made to the breeders forward. The livestock, again, genomics is playing a very important role, and NIAB is now looking at doing the genomic characterization. In fact, they've already made the chip, and Subir Majumdar has been talking about it, and it should be launched formally by the Honorable Minister. It should have been done 2 days back if we didn't have this surge of COVID in Delhi. But moving forward, what is it going to do? Not just the conservation, but it's also going to help us to do the trait identification. Genome India, the first Indian initiative that we launched for cataloging the human genome. And this was, again, one of the major initiatives which is focusing on cancer, genetic disorder, maternal and child health. And linked with it, we've also launched the mission on human microbiome initiative. Because while you're studying the genomic data, it's also important to look at the microbiome data and see how you could link it. And we hope that this is going to really give us a lot of results, because this is going to be the basis of our precision healthcare mission that we move forward to. One of our largest studies that we are doing is, again, maternal and child health. And this, Dr. Shinjini Bhatnagar leads this whole effort at THSTI, and I know that Partha and his team and many others from Indian Institute of Science and others are part of this. This is one of the largest cohorts that has been built. And based on this cohort, we are taking up many, many other studies. So whether it's just the preterm birth or it's the exposure to pollution, bringing in all aspects, and of course, looking at AI tools to be able to develop the predictive diagnosis as we move forward. And with this strength that we had, we launched our MEET program, that is the Mission on Rare and Genetic Disorders, where we've set up these Nidan Kendras. We are currently only in 7 aspirational districts. We've already put in a commitment that by 2022, moving on to 23, maybe by the time we complete 75 years, we'll have at least in every aspirational district one such a clinic which helps to do the screening, prenatal screening, newborn screening. And I think that is really what is going to help us to move ahead. We are hoping that by the end of this year, we will be rolling out at least in a few pilot states to see how we can take that forward. Linked with the Human Cell Atlas program, and why were we so confident? Because we have a lot of strength that we are building in a large number of university and college-driven initiative, and that is Manav, where we are getting these students to look at and build a comprehensive human atlas. So NCCS Pune, ICER Pune have come together with Persistent, and this is one of the large initiatives that we've been able to do. So you see, we all have strengths in computational biology, and this is again strengths that we've built over many years. We've got large number of courses, but what are we working on? Trying to see how we bring in this big data analytics, multi-scale modeling. This can contribute to all these areas, but have we made the best use of this strength that we have? I think that's a question that needs to be pondered on. Similarly, structural biology. What great strengths we have. Our infrastructure today, whether you see it, most of the major institutes that we have IIC Bangalore, the INSTEM Bangalore, our Bangalore cluster, Delhi, IIT Delhi, all of them, the cryo-EMs. I mean, we have the best of state-of-art infrastructure. It's not that we need to count a few institutes on our fingers now. But have we been able to, as I said, look at this data generation, but link it with data output and see how well we could take it, bring it into the application form. So this is really what we are trying to do with artificial intelligence and big data, trying to see how we connect that. But for this, what have we done? We've actually set up the Indian Biological Data Center. This is the first time that such a center has been set up, and our effort is that we would have all the data from India now at one place, so that we can be really a sort of a site which can talk to NCBI and EBI and be at par with those. So we have our own Indian site at par with NCBI, EBI, and that's really the effort. We formulated a set of guidelines or policy for the biological data sharing. I'm hopeful that in the next couple of weeks, it will come out in some shape, whether as a guideline or a policy, but which will allow us to bring together the data, but yet maintaining the data with the smaller groups across the country. So we're proposing to set up a sort of a biogrid where this would be the main hub, but you would have satellite centers across the country which maintain this database. And this is why is it important? Important because you see, this is really what DBT has done, where so much, and these are only some examples where we've been able to generate, or we are currently generating networks. We've established one of the best digitized bioinformatics networks across the country. All these, we're talking about the use of genomics tools, but this is only DBT's programs that I'm putting before you. We have CSIR, we have DST, we have ICMR, we have ICR. All that data, just look at the volumes of the data. Can all this be brought out so that if we could start looking at that data, I think we have not even scratched the tip of the iceberg in looking at the value of that data, and that's what it is. So having told you where we stand today, what are we trying to look at in the future as we go on? This is a statement that we had made to the Honorable Prime Minister, as I said, this group of ministries and departments, and I had the privilege of being the convener for this group. We actually said, what is our vision? And it's going to be a Sashakt Bharat, a technologically empowered New India, where we could develop and harness technologies and innovations for a sustainable, inclusive, prosperous and secure India, but more importantly, empower the countries with new emerging and disruptive technologies and innovation, realizing what the potential is of our conventional technologies. This slide, all of us know. We know that technology is a key driver of social and economic development. At the bottom of this slide, you see many logos. These are all the national missions to which all these various technologies contribute to. We address the sustainable development goals. And today, we have a vision that we will contribute to the 5 trillion economy at different sectors. Biotechnology said it's going to be 150 billion. The electronic sector said we're going to be $1 trillion. So there are different visions that everyone has had in the science and technology sector. This is what biotechnology is. As I said, these numbers also are a little outdated. We are now no longer 3,400 biotech startups. We are actually over 4,500 startups. We are over 60 incubators, but we're looking at a $150 billion economy by the time we reach 2025. Having done this exercise, it's important for us that if we need to propel into the future, if we need to be a global leader, if we need to establish our own strengths within the country, what really are the challenges that we need to address? We need to build capacities for future emerging technologies. Currently, our biggest challenge is moving technologies from lab to commercial scale. Can we really help these academia industry partnerships to become co-development partnerships? We only look at technology transfers. In technology transfers, it's not easy to get the ownership to move to the level as it is. We need to take these to the society. For that, it's not always just handing over technologies to the rural sector. You need to empower them. Many times, the technologies that we develop in our own national mission, in our laboratories, are not aligned with the national mission which the government is moving out. If you're talking about a Swachh Bharat mission, are we really getting our laboratories to develop technologies which they need? Is there an interface between the development and the demand? How much do they talk to each other? And if we've been able to do that, as I said in the beginning, how are we going to look at our human capital? How are we going to incentivize the private sector to come forward? So one key aspect that came out of this is we need to build new clusters. The Department of Biotechnology was one of the first ones which actually brought in this cluster concept, and we have 4 clusters that we have currently. We've now moved into the next phase, what we've called the Urjit Clusters, the University Research Joint Industry Translational Clusters. We put out a call recently. Proposals have been received. We are hoping that in the next year or so, we'll have about at least 10 such clusters across the country. What's different in them? The difference is that they're not just one academic institute with an incubator or 2 or 3 academic institutes coming up with an incubator, but they have all stakeholders. They have the industry as a co-development partner. If it's a medical-based, health system-based, the hospitals have to be partners in them. So I think that's really what we are trying to see. Private sector takes on responsibility and ownership. But then when we develop these technologies, they move in seamlessly from the research institutes, academia, through the startups to the industry. I mean, that's the path that we feel is going to be good. We can take it ahead. But having said that, the technology scale-up clusters are very important also. And why is it so? We created a very important group, and that's our Startup India concept, where we created these incubation centers. We then created the Make in India models, where we set up these industry parks. But how do the incubation center startups suddenly become ready for industrial parks? What is that missing gap there? And those are technology clusters, where you need to have technology propellers, give them design and fab labs, give them prototyping facilities, test beds for validation, small scale manufacturing platforms. And today, while we made this large commitment, we have already started doing that. And for the COVID times, we actually demonstrated it as well, and we've been able to see success. The second area for building future technologies, we've already put out a commitment saying that we'll set up these centers of excellence on new and emerging technologies. How can we have these world-class hubs? And this is not biotech specific only. The numbers I'm giving to you is for the entire technology sector. That is DBT, DST, CSIR, Ministry of Electronics, all combined together. So we collectively, Department of Telecom, because they're all interconnected. And we do need to rely on each other to take our technologies forward. That is the changing landscape. You cannot have any one agency now or one institute working in isolation. It has to be a combination, whether we look at any of these emerging areas. Look at core ICT, look at artificial intelligence, look at advanced manufacturing or your cell and gene therapy. We need to build teams of young researchers. And I think those teams have to be interdisciplinary teams as we move on. Just for the biotech sector or the medical sector, the whole area of CAR T cell therapy, we need it today for our affordable healthcare systems. And I think that's really we have to see how we take it forward. We've just supported one with the industry academic group. We've got IIT Mumbai working with the Tata Memorial, but many more such partnerships need to arise. This is our stem cell center in Vellore, which they have working again on cell and gene therapy. But there are areas which we've missed out enough. We talk about the whole area of quantum, quantum physics, quantum computation. Do we have enough teams in quantum biology? Have we missed this as a key area that we need to take forward? Probably yes, because today our emphasis was going more on an application, without forgetting that there would be areas where we need to build our knowledge and strengths today, which will few years down the line start giving us the results. So we should not forget that we need to invest in those areas of basic research which do not have an application tomorrow, but which will help us to build strengths to be able to move ahead. As I said, we need to empower the rural sector. We're looking at creating these clusters. We've done some programs, integrated farming systems, creating enterprises. These are women self-help groups that we've created. So for each of these that I'm talking to you, we've actually built examples. But today we are talking about an Atmanirbhar Bharat. Not only self-reliant in products, but it's also self-reliant in terms of the components for those products and the technologies. We need to have, today at the time of COVID, we realized when we were making our diagnostic kits, we got our kits to be made, but the components for the kits were not ready. Were totally dependent on imports, and because of supply chain disruptions, we couldn't get. Now, these slides I'm just going to skip through because this is before you, the vision which the sectoral group has set before the government to say, what are we going to do in the next 5 years? How are we going to landscape? Where are we going to be positioned? Whether it's affordable healthcare, whether it's medical technologies, you see there is an exponential growth that we're positioning for ourselves. Many of these in healthcare would now change because of the COVID, and they would actually get a much faster boost. If we looked at a 10-year cycle for a path for developing vaccines, nobody is going to allow the scientists 10 years now, whether it's any vaccine, because if you can do a COVID vaccine in 1 year, you definitely can look at us, improve crop varieties. I just spoke to you about the molecular breeding, marker-assisted varieties, the cattle genomic. That's really our mission. So each of the areas that we've spoken of, they've been missions that we put forward. This is the CSI mission that they've put in for creating globally benchmark technologies for sustainable chemical technologies. A mobility and battery storage sector, you're looking at SARAS. I mean, these are, again, very ambitious plans which have been put forward, which will not be just for a self-reliant India, but also globally. The first deep ocean mission just announced in our budget with the Department of the Ministry of Earth Sciences is steering. That's going to give us huge global leadership. India will join the select club of 5 nations to be able to do that. So that is what our ambition is now. Looking at self-sufficiency in drinking water in island and coastal areas, Ministry of Earth Sciences has already set up these desalination plants. These are only examples, many of them to move ahead. Coming to the last part of my talk, we needed to create a very strong innovation ecosystem. We did that. BIRAC was set up. And here today, we have a very robust ecosystem that we've been able to set up. As I said, more than 4,500 startups. We're looking at a whole series of support systems that we can provide, from the financial support, from an ideation to product till it reaches the market, to mentoring support. And then the government came forward and became investors. We put in investment funds to it. Never heard of in the government system, but that's what we are doing. We partnered with them. We've set up fund of funds. This is what we've really been able to achieve as, again, a snapshot of what it is. What we've put in as our funding, out of that 1,500 startups have actually been able to bring in 3,500 crores as follow-on funding. But what I'm very pleased to let you know is they have been valued at over 3,500 crores. I think that is the strength that we have today, which we need to take forward. Our COVID experience has clearly been able to, as I said, it's a real-time demonstration of what we did. Does it work? And it did. The COVID consortium that we set up, all ministries, all departments came forward. I'm just putting before you the DBT COVID consortium. You see, we've made self-sufficiency for the COVID diagnostic kits in less than 60 days. This is the platform I was talking about. Today, this 35 number has gone to 200. 200 manufacturers came together. We just gave them a demand aggregation. They brought together the supplies. We have all indigenously developed diagnostic kits and its component. We set up the first mobile lab. Today we are expanding it to send it to other parts of the country. 4 more are already ready to be deployed in different parts. ICMR took it on. They have labs. Indian Institute of Science then set up. So we have a number of these mobile labs. Vaccines is a story that all of you know. 2 of them already got emergency use authorization, many of them nearing its clearances, whether it's the DNA vaccine, whether it's the mRNA vaccine, whether it's the RBD, a portfolio of over 30 vaccines. I mean, a country that we are proud of this, that we had the strengths and the capacities of the academy and industry to come forward. We set up these incubation centers. These incubation centers, as I said, have huge space. This is a snapshot of what we have built in the last 5 years. Looking at this, I think we feel confident that we are ready to move forward. This is how we've been able to strengthen our startups, and this gives us the confidence that yes, we're ready to move. We need to ask ourselves key questions. How are we going to achieve this exponential growth? I think it has to be the movement from individual science to multidisciplinary science, to multi-agency science, to multi-institutional science. I think that is where our shift has to be. It is got to be basic applied translational, what we were doing, but do we have to now move it into discovery-based, knowledge-driven translational science, which has an immediate application? But for this, we have to be ready that these have to be high-risk areas. But for this, if we invest in them, they give us a high reward and they give us high returns, because those are the returns we are looking for. I conclude by saying India has large dreams. And this is Dr. Abdul Kalam's famous saying, in which he said, dream, 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 dreams transform into thoughts, thoughts result into action. What we've done till now is really been not only dreams, they've been thoughts, but they've also been action. Moving forward, this cannot be an incremental growth. It has to be an exponential growth, because we know that science knows no boundaries, recognizes no borders. And today we are all confident that science is going to contribute to achieve one common goal for a healthy world, but more importantly, a sustainable universe. And I'm confident, and I look towards the academies for your advice. What is it that we need to take this vision of ours, our dream of ours, to be fulfilled? So thank you very much. I've gone a little over my time, but thank you so much, Partha, for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you. This is just absolutely awesome. The propulsion into the future is just amazing and absolutely awesome. Thank you very much, Renu. This was a lovely talk. There is one question on the chat box. This is from somebody in some private university. Her name is Sushmita Shukla. I'll read that. Well, first of all, she says it's a very informative talk that you have given. And she says that being in a private university, of the various kinds of mega missions that you have talked to us about, can she be a part of it, or can the university be a part of it? And if so, how?
Absolutely. I think the message I gave right at the beginning is that this is an inclusive participation of all stakeholders. And if you recall the first slide that I said about building human capital, our actual human capital comes from the universities, from these various institutes for which you are responsible. So every researcher can be part of this. There are multiple examples that we have of universities being key partners. These are not only driven by research institutes, these missions that I spoke about. So yes, please be part of.
What is the contribution of science and technology to the Indian economy? What should be the goal?
Yeah, that's the question.
Okay, so let me say this, that all that I showed you in terms of its application of science and technology, how do you measure the growth of science and technology, or the contribution of science and technology? Is it in actual numbers of how it contributed to the GDP? That could be through large number of factors. The human capital that we built, the strengths that we've been able to bring in terms of new technology products, but more importantly, how those have got translated in terms of where they've reached, whether products which have gone to the speed, or it's the medicines which have been made available to society. Today in COVID times, somebody says, how did science and technology contribute to COVID? What will we look at? Will we say that we actually produced 12 crore doses of a vaccine? Do you look at the number of lives it has saved? Do you look at the economic growth that you've been able to do and unlock because you were confident that you would be able to take a vaccine forward? Today we are in a COVID surge. Everyone's saying, if we complete a vaccination, we should be able to open up. So you see, it's very difficult to put a number to it. But I think the contribution of science and technology in every field right from the first nuclear science slide that I showed you, to the green revolution, to our polio-free India, to where we stand today in times of COVID, to the precision medicine, that's really the contribution of science. Very difficult to, because they're tangibles, intangibles, all of them. But I think the goal is what I put in my last slide. Can science contribute to national and global challenges so that we have one sustainable universe for us? Do we have one healthy universe in all ways for it? Thank you.
So Renu, there are lots of laudatory comments that I'm not reading out, but I have a question for you. You see, of course, it is absolutely important, like Dr. Kalam said, that you need to think big and so on. And we've gotten a fantastic glimpse of, where we are propelling into the future, the kind of dreams that all of you have conjured. You also mentioned in the beginning that we have dearth of capacity, and there's a major effort on capacity building. The question, and I'm not being negative at all, I sometimes wonder whether those of you who are at the, on the saddle, really feel that are we trying to do too much in too short a time? The kind of mega missions that we are, embarking in, given our budget, science and technology budget, and given the capacity, do you sometimes have the creeps that we are trying to do too much in too short a time?
So Partha, I think we do not have too much of time. So if we have to do this, we are actually running against time. Your point about having limitation of resources, both in terms of financial and human, is a point very important. But that then takes you to the whole point that we spoke about towards the end of our increasing dependency on collaborations, on bringing in more collaborative nature, so that many a times we are reinventing the wheel. There is not sufficient data sharing, there's not sufficient knowledge sharing. And because of that, we are spreading ourselves too thin. If we all come together as collective groups to be able to respond to a common challenge, I think we would be able to optimally utilize what we have and see how we can take it ahead. So yes, it's there, but then considering where we are, you see how we ran against time at the COVID times. How did we deliver so quickly? Because there was a global collaboration, there was a national collaboration. You have to tell any two groups come together or push them into it, they came together on their own. So I think that is really the sort of mindset and the culture that we'll have to bring into this.
That's wonderful. That's a good positive message at which we probably can stop, because they're just flooded with laudatory comments. So I'm not reading them out. You might want to take a look at the chat box. So thank you very much. This was just absolutely brilliant, and I think it was a wonderful inaugural lecture with so much of positivity, so much of positive vibes, and a great message at the end that we need to collaborate in order to bring our country, move forward or propel our country into the future. For those of you who have been able to join this inaugural lecture, thank you very much for joining. And those of you who have sent in comments, thank you very much for your comments and questions. Renu, thank you very much one more time on behalf of the Academy that you have been able to spare your valuable time and share your thoughts with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Partha. Pleasure to be with you all. Thank you very much. Thank you.